guys, it's Hannah and this is Bookworms Talk, and today I'm going to review for you Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. I read this back in May, haven't got around to reviewing it until now, so I brushed up a little bit and I feel prepared enough to give you guys like a summary and my general opinion. As always, the beginning of the video will be a spoiler-free section if you're new here, and then I'll warn you before I get into spoiling details. Just in case you haven't heard, there's this section on Craigslist called Missed Connections. And basically how it works, if you, pass somebody in the subway, you go there and you're like, oh, the person wearing the red scarf, like, I, didn't have the guts to say hello, but I really wanted to, and so you post on there in hopes that they will also, go there and post and see. That's the idea behind it. But what's different than just a misconnection ad is they actually knew each other 15 years prior, and they went to college together, they were sweethearts, and they lost touch after graduation. I won't tell you the details why. It's kind of a big part of the story, so I won't spoil that, but I'll keep it vague and say that just that connection was lost. They lost touch and hadn't spoken to each other since. And so they encounter each other. I think one was getting on a bus and the other was off, and they couldn't say hello. So Matt goes to the misconnections thing and writes and hopes that she'll find it. And that's what you're going to see on the back of the book as a summary, is that letter / post that he made. And I'm going to read you just a little bit from the back, just a touch, the part that made me decide, okay, I want to start reading this. Like, that's the part that got me, so maybe it'll do the same for you. We lived on nothing but excitement of finding ourselves through music. You were obsessed with Jeff Buckley. Photography. I couldn't stop taking pictures of you. Hanging out in Washington Square Park. And all the weird things we did to make money. I learned more about myself that year than any other. Yet somehow, it all fell apart. We lost touch the summer after graduation when I went to South Africa to work on the National Geographic. When I came back, you were gone. A part of me still wonders if I pushed you too hard after the wedding. But it's a really sweet story. It feels actually quite, other than that initial whole misconnection idea being, not turning creepy, otherwise very much a realistic, plausible, down-to-earth, not too over-the-top, sweet story, and I really enjoyed it. So that's about all I can say without spoiling anything. So for those of you who are interested in reading it and don't want to be spoiled, I will see you guys next time. You can go and check out my channel for other videos and hauls and stuff that I've done lately. And for everybody else, I will now talk spoilers. I really enjoyed the way in which this story was told. The way it went from past and present, it didn't feel too every other chapter where you felt jarred if you ever took a break from reading it and you didn't just binge it. You know what I'm talking about? Something else I wanted to touch on is college students who don't have endless money. I feel like because it is an easier way to tell a story, a lot of times that just happens in books, whereas this actually addressed the common issue of college students not having a lot of money, especially Grace, and the things that she would do in order to have, or make money, I should say, like donating plasma and, kind of getting a free, I think it was free juice or a free meal or something out of it. And it felt very grounded in reality for elements like that. Specifically one teacher, which granted he ended up being a significant character. What was his name? They called him Pornsake. Was that actually his name? I can't remember. He felt like a full-bodied character. He didn't feel like a silhouette. I hope you get what I mean when I say that. That's always a pet peeve of mine, when characters are underdeveloped. They're placeholders for something that's obligatory. In teen novels, they do this all the time, where the parent is very, barely there just for the ease of not having to write that character, or their, lack of importance, which makes the story feel unrealistic, because if you're a teen, most of the time, very, your parents are involved. I guess what I'm getting at is to say that the characters didn't feel underdeveloped. Even characters that were definitely side characters still felt like they had presence and were tangible. Something that I love in all of Renee's novels that I've read is the music, which is a rare thing. I think Tiffany DeBartolo is the only other author that I've read that includes music in the story, but not pop music, not trendy, popular, I don't know, to make it feel aged. These are always, they're always classics. And so it already feels aged, so it's never going to not feel aged, but not in the same way. It feels very much I don't want to call it a period piece, but something that's based in the 90s on purpose, rather than you being in the 90s, writing something in the 90s and then reading it. I don't know. I don't know how to explain that. But there were a lot of great music that I was familiar with, stuff I wasn't familiar with that I've now since become a fan of. She just has good music taste. Just straight up, she does. I mean, like the back said, there was some Jeff Buckley, there's Pink Floyd. I just really liked that added element to the story, and it didn't feel contemporarily dated. I don't know if that makes sense. I was lazy when I was reading this book. I just created a note in my phone with all the pages that I liked. It wasn't specific. It wasn't like, oh, middle of the page here. I'm just like, it's gonna be a minute. Oh, I just caught something I didn't catch before. So music is such a heavy thing in the book, or a heavily woven theme, I should say, because she's a cellist, and I know a little bit about music. I know how to read it. I'm at least familiar with some terminology, but they call it movements. So like the first movement, the second movement, I only just now caught that. Oh my god. Okay, I know why I made a note on this page. I'm just gonna read you a bit. I used to do this in reviews. Let me know if you guys still like this or if it's, takes up too much time and you're not a fan. New York has an energy that takes root inside of you. Even a transplant like me knows the different boroughs like they're living, breathing organisms. There's nowhere else like it. The city becomes a character in your life, a love you can't take out of you. The mysteriously human element about this place can make you fall in love and break your heart at the same time. When you hear her sound, when you breathe in her scent, you share it with all the people walking beside you on the street, in the subway, or gazing from a tall building across Central Park. You know at once that you are alive, and that life is beautiful, precious, and fleeting. I think that's why people in New York feel so connected to each other. The city harnesses this collective love and admiration. Isn't that so beautiful? I do want to talk about the way in which, I don't even want to say he left, they separated. He did. They did separate. Both are true. Like, I see both sides. It was just miscommunication. The whole thing, just teenage, and again, this is very realistic, and I'm not, in fact, I'm doing the opposite of faulting the book for this. Like, I'm praising it for it, that teenagers, young adults, I still struggle with it myself. We have this issue with being able to communicate because we lack the emotional vocabulary, really. And depending on your past issues, especially Grace had plenty because of her home life, it's hard for her to depend on anybody or to like count on anybody. And then when she felt that he had very much like abandoned her and then leaving her in her situation, though he didn't know, I understand her reason for going off and going to the symphony. And if she had just communicated that to him, or if he had communicated to her, and they had a line of communication that, granted, I do remember there being like phone connection issues, like being able to consistently talk wasn't a thing. It was just, it was so frustrating as a reader, but that's also what kept me wanting to read it. Like, that was a very realistic conflict. It wasn't, I don't think, overinflated, because I still think it's very much grounded in the reality of how the characters think and behave. And another thing that I found to feel very true was his ex-wife. I'm trying to recall her name. Doesn't matter. It's fine. She understandably felt very, I don't want to say jealous, but envious maybe, of knowing that he was still kind of hung up on her. And I get her keeping the letters from him, and as fucked up as I still think it is, I get it. The motivation's there. Do I particularly like her as a character? Absolutely not. But is she superhuman and all of her motivations make sense? Hell yeah. And that's why I liked her, didn't like her. That makes sense. Overall, I've got to say that I really did like the book. I have other reviews, some of Renee's novels that I will link in the description if you're a fan of her writing and you want to check out what I think of some of her other books. Sweet Thing's my favorite. I've read it many times and I feel like each time I get something new out of it, so I just love it. It's a great one. Highly recommend reading that as well as this. It was a nice, sweet read and it felt very down to earth and I really dug that. So I hope that you guys enjoy this and I will talk to you guys next time.